Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Chapter 3, Part 3 of Basic Economic Concepts. Today, we're going to discuss public goods, market failures, and this lovely thing called externalities. All right, so hold on to your hats, and here we go. All right, what are public goods? Well, they are shared goods or services for which it would be inefficient or impractical to, one, make consumers pay individually, or B, exclude those who did not pay. They're like roads. So maybe not everybody pays for the roads, but if we didn't have roads, we're all in trouble, right? We're all up a creek without a paddle, holding the boat, waterfall approaching, right? So, but if each person paid individually, that would be impractical and inefficient. So this is why it's a public good. It just makes more sense for the government to pay for it. Market failures are when the market does not distribute resources efficiently, not equitably, not equally, efficiently. Okay, remember, there's a difference between equity, equality, and efficiency. All right, so this is when the market does not distribute resources efficiently when it is operating on its own. This is assuming there is no government interference. Externalities are an economic side effect to the entity that did not decide how much to produce or consume. Now, externalities can be negative or positive. And as we examine government policies, you should pay particular attention to externalities. This will become clearer as we move into the supply and demand unit. But remember, externalities can be negative or positive, and it's an economic side effect to the entity that did not decide to do it in the first place. Okay? Characteristics of public goods. Individual payment on something that everyone enjoys collectively is not efficient. Roads are an example. Stopping necessary services for everyone because some do not pay is also inefficient. Water and sewer. Anyone can use the service as much as they want or need without interfering in future use for other consumers. Fire and ambulance services are another example of that. All right, so cost versus benefit. We have infrastructure. These are basic facilities necessary for a society or economy to function and to grow. Whenever we need to build our infrastructure, this is what they're talking about building. And then we have public versus private. Public is available to all and is provided by government via taxes. Private is available to those who can or are willing to pay. And it's usually provided by private enterprise or individuals. The benefit to individual must be greater than the cost to individual if paid privately. The benefit to society must be greater than the total cost to society. All right, that's how things should work. That's not necessarily how they work, and we'll explore that more in class. Example, private corporation builds roads, charges big money for the use. Only rich people have cars, so everyone else takes public transit. Taxes go up, so government can pay private company for the road use. Car industry goes under because nobody can afford a car. All right, so you see how in this example this would be a market failure, where the car industry should have tried to stop the private corporation from building the roads, should have insisted on government building it, or should have at least worked out some deal with the private company that the money wouldn't be as expensive to use it, right? So that not only rich people could have cars, because now since only rich people have cars, it becomes a very specialized niche industry because most people can't afford one. All right, so this is an example of that. There's a free rider problem. It's similar to the government concept, but it's not exactly the same. A person not willing to pay for the good or service, but gets it anyway because it's a public good. So you may not have paid for the roads, but you get it anyway because, well, the roads are there and people use them, right? Market failures. This does not equal a failure of the free enterprise system. This is important to know. See, some people like to pounce on, oh, look, the market failed. It's an example of how the free enterprise does not work. No. That's not accurate. Now, I was going to say another word, but that's inappropriate for a video lesson. It's a failure of the market in a specific situation to provide a necessary good or service. It doesn't mean that the free enterprise system is ultimately a failure. It means in a specific instance, it was a failure. So you get an F on one test, right? That means you're an idiot, right? That means you're an epic failure as a student because you failed one test. No. If anybody said that to you, they would be an idiot. They would be a failure. No. You failed in a specific situation, but it doesn't mean that on the whole, you are a bad student. It's just one particular case, right? Government typically steps in, at least in our economy they do, to correct market failures. Externalities. Let's talk about this. This is a fun one. So external costs or benefits to a policy. So positive, beneficial side effects that are felt by everyone. ability of all people to travel on all roads in the United States. Negative. Costs are paid for by someone other than the producer. A few years back, no one was studying and everybody was failing my tests. But not everybody. There were a few students who were studying and they were doing well. But I had to force everyone to turn in study logs because some people didn't study. A lot of people didn't. But everybody has to do them. Even though several of the students were not the cause of the problem, they got stuck having to deal with it. So that's an example of a negative externality. Government goals. The goal is to create positive externalities and limit negative ones. So you have government versus market solutions here. Consensus argues for a happy medium. Government sets the goals, and private industry innovates to find ways to achieve them. As we've learned, and as we will continue to learn, this doesn't always work out, and this is a continual debate within politics and also within economics over how much involvement should the government have. That's the end of part 3. I'll see y'all in part 4 for a wrap-up of Unit 1.